Hello, welcome to Coventry University The Pitch, a challenge for managing professional football club. This is part A for the podcast series with Phil Carling, recording live from Octagon House in London. Hi Phil, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, Sanmaan.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions and I'm sure it'll help our audience to have some expert views on shared sponsorships. Right, coming to the first question, what do you think? What does a typical shared sponsorship deal normally involve?
Okay, in the first instance, the club and the prospective partners would have to decide over what period of time they wish to conclude a deal.
Sure.
So the term of the contract is quite important. Typically, shirt sponsorships are anything between 3 and 5 years. So the primary consideration is, does the club and the prospective partner want a long-term deal? Does it want a medium-term deal, or does it want a short-term deal? So that would be the first consideration. The second consideration would be how much money is going to be involved. And what would be the typical cost of a shirt sponsorship. Normally that entirely depends on the nature of the club being sponsored. Clearly Manchester United, Liverpool, Real Madrid can command higher sums than clubs that are perhaps less well supported. So that would be a secondary consideration, would be money. The third consideration would be what rights are going to be purchased in this deal. So first and foremost would be exposure on the shirts, of course. So the size of the logo on the shirt is normally laid down by the governing body. So in the instance of European clubs, the guidelines are laid down by UEFA, so it can only be a certain size, that logo. But typically, in addition to that exposure on the shirt, there would also be other benefits that the sponsor would get, a potential sponsor, and that would include perimeter signage, it would include tickets, it would include hospitality. They would be exclusive in their category, in their business category, so only they and they alone in that business category could be a sponsor of that particular club. They would get access to what's called intellectual property. So they would have the ability to use the club's logos and, in most instances, image rights of the players as well in advertising and promotions, on pack and in store as well.
Right.
So typically there's a whole raft of benefits that would be attached to the broad right, which is the exposure on the shirt. So normally that's the type of thing that would be involved in a deal.
Right. So what does a football club normally look within the shared sponsorship deal? Okay.
The first and, unfortunately, the primary consideration is the amount of money. So you knew where I was going with that one. It is a fact of life that footballers and running football clubs is a very expensive business. So all the commercial incomes that are generated by the club assume a very large importance for them. So the club is looking to maximise its inventory and the rights that it has to sell. Typically, a club will make money from ticket sales, from broadcasts, the sale of its TV rights, and thirdly, from its sponsorships. So, in terms of sponsorship, the shirt sponsorship, together with the what's called the apparel deal, the deal to supply the kit to the club, is the largest and most valuable of all the contracts. So the money that the club generates from its shirt sponsorship is of particular importance to the clubs that are selling it. So outside of the money, what are they looking for? They would be looking generally for a company that reflects the values of the club itself.
Right.
So it is very important, particularly for large clubs, to be involved with prestigious brands and brands that in some way reflect the values that the club itself have. So typically Manchester United would be, they have been associated with financial services products which have a global, they're global businesses and very prestigious.
Right.
So clearly that reflects Manchester United's own views of its status. And thirdly, they will want brands that are going to use the rights in a way that will also expose the club on marketing platforms on a global basis as well.
So that was on the view from a football club, but I mean, coming back from the shirt sponsors, I mean, what would they look at from within a shirt sponsorship deal?
Okay, critically here, objectives and return on investment differ from company to company and business sector to business sector.
Right.
So what they're looking for from a shirt sponsorship will entirely depend on the business objectives of the company involved. So crucially, a company that's selling beer will have quite different objectives perhaps from a company that's selling insurance. A company that is involved in the holiday industry would probably use a shirt sponsorship in a different way to a company, let's say, that was involved in the gaming industry or
Right.
gambling. So the business sector that they come from generally sets the objectives and the return on investment criteria that the company will use when evaluating a shirt sponsorship. But let me give you a few examples, just so that the students out there can try and understand this and work on it. So the key thing from a shirt sponsorship is how much advertising exposure will this shirt sponsorship generate for my company? In other words, how famous will it make my brand?
Right.
So typically, the shirt of a big club playing in the Premier League, all 380 Premier League games are shown in over 200 markets. So the exposure opportunity, the advertising value of that shirt and the scale of that exposure is enormously valuable. And these things are quite precisely calculated. So you can place the value because the way in which you evaluate it is, if I had to buy the advertising by going on television with a commercial or buying newspaper exposure, how much would the value of that advertising cost me in the normal course of events? So the advertising exposure, how famous it makes the brand, is very important. The second most important thing is this club, is this brand a good fit for my brand values and my business?
Right.
So that's a very important consideration. They want star quality. They want the right to be associated with excellence. So they'll be looking at whether the club is successful and how successful has that club been over a period of time. And they will want to see, has it been well managed? And what are the future prospects or the prospects for that club in the lifetime of this agreement? Because what they don't want, obviously, is to sign a sponsorship deal and find in 2 years' time that the club gets relegated, or has a crisis of management, or changes ownership, or so stability, longevity. Those would also be factors in assessing the value of a sponsorship in a property.
Right, okay. Now, do we have any general ideas or views that will ensure that it is a successful sponsorship deal?
Yes, I think the first thing is both parties have to be pleased with the deal, and that will be both from a financial and a rights perspective, and that there's a good chemistry between the two organisations. So those factors are important. The second thing is that from certainly the most successful partnerships are where rights are delivered, and there is from the point of view of the person or the company that's acquired the rights, that they use the rights. It's a bit like a gym membership. You know, you can go and buy the sponsorship, but if you don't use it, it's what we call in the industry leveraging the rights.
Right.
So if you don't go out and create programs and marketing activities that actually use the rights, then there isn't a great deal of benefit other than the advertising exposure. So the successful partnerships are ones where there is a proactive relationship on behalf of both sides of the equation, the club and the advertiser that's acquired the rights. So those are definitely key ingredients for success.
So it's basically the partnership between the sponsor and the club is a real great factor for success.
Yes, very much so. And the long-term partnerships, and I mean beyond one term, so it could be a 3-year deal, it could be a 5-year deal, but the best relationships are those which have been going on for probably 12, 15 years. So someone like Carlsberg with Liverpool, for example, that is a continuing relationship, and it's a long-term relationship because both parties derive great benefit from the relationship, and it is a very strong partnership, that one.
I think the answers was brilliant. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for listening us. Thanks for watching us. We will see you in a moment for part B for the podcast series with Phil Carling. Bye for now.